Hello and welcome to our course on building a Firebase chat application using Flutter. In this course, you will learn how to use the Flutter framework and the Firebase Firestore database to create a fully functional chat application. We will implement the core functionality of our chat application, including sending and receiving messages, as well as updating the last active and online status. Throughout the course, you will also learn how to implement FCM push notifications so that user receives the notification on receiving the message. By the end of this course, you will have the skills and knowledge you need to build your own chat application using Flutter and Firebase. So let's get started. In this video, we will create the UI where we can see all the users who are signed up in our app. So let's start creating the UI for chat screen. Let's pass the chat screen widget to our home property. Next, create this chat screen. Next, inside the build method, create this scaffold and create this app bar first. As you know, we want to show the list of all the users. So let's create the model class for the users. Create the properties such as UID, name, email, is online, etc. Pass the same to its constructor. Now inside the chat screen, using the model class, let's create some dummy user data. This dummy data will help us to mock the data which will be coming from the Firebase later. Next, inside the body parameter, create the list view builder. Pass the item count first, and to its item builder, let's pass the user item widget. Now create this user item widget which will return the list tile. Inside the list tile, create the circle avatar. To its background image property, we are passing the network image so that we can show these images here. We need to get the user data from the parent widget, therefore create the property user, pass the same to its constructor, and finally get the image from this user property. To show this image, let's pass the user data to our user item widget, add this content padding property to remove the extra padding. Now we want to stack the circle avatar, indicating if the user is online or offline. So let's add the stack widget and align it to the bottom right corner of the circle avatar. Add the circle avatar, and if the user is online, we will show the green indicator, else it will be gray. Next, add the radius of 5 pixels and give some padding. Now add the title with user's name and subtitle to show the time of last active. Now inside this list view builder of our chat screen, replace this builder with separated and add the separator builder with size box having some height. Also add some bouncing scroll and some padding. And with this, our chat screen UI is ready. In our next video, we will add the functionality to get the users from the Firebase. In this video, we will create the users collection in Firestore database and also show all these created users in our app. I have created multiple users, so now we want to show these users instead of this dummy data. Therefore, create this Firebase provider which extends change notifier. Next, create the empty list of users. Now create the method get all users, create the instance of users collection and get the snapshot. Make sure to flag this property to true so that our listener can listen to the changes when new user gets created. Here we also want to convert this user's JSON data into Dart object. Therefore, go to user model class and create this from JSON method. This method will return this user model which is having these JSON values. So now inside this listener, we are mapping the user's document and converting the JSON data of each user into user model object. And finally, we are converting all these users into list and we are assigning this list to this user object. Make sure to notify the listener after getting all the users. And finally, return the users. Now go to the chat screen. Inside init state, call the getAllUsers method. Now go to the main.dart file and add change notifier provider here and provide the Firebase provider to create property. Go back to the chat screen and add consumer of Firebase provider where we will get the list of users from this value. This name could be anything. Replace the user data with the value.users in item count first and then replace the same in user item. Now refresh the app and you can see we are getting these all users here. We can add this order by last active descending to true so that we will get the recent last active users at the top. We also don't want to show the current logged in user inside this list. Therefore, if the incoming user ID is not equal to the current user ID, we will show the user item, else we will show this sized box. We also want to log out the user. Therefore, create the sign out button in app bar and pass the sign out method of Firebase to sign out. And you can see we can log out from the app. So with this, we have learned how to create the users collection and how to read all these users inside our app. In this video, we will create the chat screen where user can see the messages sent and received by him. So first of all, create this chat screen. We want to navigate to this chat screen when user clicks on any of the users here. Therefore, inside the user item widget, wrap this list tile widget with just a detector and navigate to the chat screen. Next, inside this scaffold, to its app bar, pass the build app bar widget. Next, create this build app bar widget. Now in this app bar, we want to show the image of the user which we have selected before. Therefore, to do this, let's create the user property here and pass the same to its constructor. Also pass this user to this chat screen of the user item widget. To use this, pass the row widget to its app bar title property, and using circle avatar and network image, we will show the user image here. And right beside this image, we want to show the username and his online status. Therefore, create this text widget in column with username, and in second child of this column, pass the text with online status. Here, if user is online, we will show the online text with green color, else we will show the offline text with gray color. Now we want to create the text field area, so using that, user can send the messages. Therefore, in body parameter, create the column widget. Inside this column widget, pass the chat text field widget. Next, create this chat text field widget where its build method will return the row widget. Inside this row widget, pass the custom text form field widget wrapped with expanded widget. You can see we have already created this decorated custom text form field widget. Next, create the controller in its state and use it inside the text form field. Do not forget to dispose the controller inside this dispose method. Here inside, also pass the hint text. Next, create this send button as well as this camera button. Now we want to show the messages inside this chat screen. Therefore, pass this chat messages widget here. Next, create this chat messages stateless widget which will return the list view builder. For now, we want to show the dummy messages here as we are only creating the UI first. So to do that, let's create message model class with message constructor. Create the properties required to mock the dummy data such as sender ID, receiver ID, and message types and so on. For this message type, let's create an enum having text and image types because we want to send both the text messages as well as the image messages. Now pass these properties to its constructor. Now using this message model class, let's create some dummy data here. Next, to the list view builder, pass the item count, and in its item builder, let's return the message bubble widget which we will create next. Therefore, create this message bubble widget here which will return the container having column widget. Using this message bubble widget, we want to create the bubbles for this dummy data. Therefore, we need to get the dummy data from the parent widget. Therefore, create the message property above and pass the same to its constructor. Next, pass the messages in message bubble widget in parent widget. Next, using this message property, create the text widget to show the message content. Give the container some color so that we can see the messages. Align these containers to the top right corner. Next, give some margin and padding. Also give some circular radius at 3 corners to look better. Now also show the time of the messages. As we know, these messages are of two users, one who is sending the messages from this app and second whose messages are coming here. In our dummy data, we already have sender ID and receiver ID property. So inside our message bubble widget, let's create the isme property and pass the same to its constructor. Now in its parent widget, let's define isme so that we can pass it to our message bubble widget. In its state, create the receiver ID property and from the chat screen, pass this user's ID as the receiver ID. So using this user ID, we will differentiate that if the logged in user is sender or the receiver of the particular message. Therefore, if the user ID coming from the chat screen is not same as the sender ID of the message, it means that message is of the logged in user. Else it will be this user's message which we have selected. Now let's pass the isme property to this message bubble, and depending upon isme property inside the message bubble widget, first change the alignment to the left if the messages are of the logged in user, else the messages will show at the right side. Also change the color and the border radius as per the isme boolean flag, and also align the message column to the start if isme is true. As we have seen in message model class, we have created two types of our messages. Therefore, create the isImage property above and pass the same to its constructor. So inside the list view builder of chat message widget, check if the message type is of text, and using this boolean flag, pass the isImage false value if is text message is true, otherwise isImage will be false. And inside the message bubble widget, we will show the image if isImage is true, else we will show the text. So now let's change the content and the type inside dummy data, and see we can see the image here as well. So with this, we have created the chat screen UI as well. In next video, we will create CRUD operation to create and show the messages from Firebase. In In the last video, we have created the UI to show the users messages with dummy data. So now we want to send the messages from our app and we'll save those messages in Firestore database. Go to this chat text field widget, scroll down till the send icon widget and call this send text method when user clicks on this send icon. Next, create this send text method. Inside this method, if the controller text is not empty, we will call this add text message method, which we will create next. Therefore, create this method in Firebase Firestore service class. This method will take the content and the receiver's user ID. Pass the same in send text method as well. Now get back to the add text message method and using message model class, create the message object with content, send time, receiver ID, message type and send ID, which will be current user ID. Next, we will call the method add message to chat. Now create this method. This method will take the receiver ID and the message object. Pass the same where we are calling this method. Now using the Firestore instance, get the current users document. Inside this document, create the chat document if not created. And here we are adding the chat document with the receiver's ID. So inside this chat collection, we will store every chat of the user with the receiver's ID. And inside these chat documents, create the message collection and add the message object to it. But do not forget to convert the message object into JSON. Therefore, go to the message object and create the toJSON method and pass the key value pair of each property. We need to convert this message type into JSON as well. Therefore, create the toJSON method inside message type enum as well. This toJSON method will return the name of the message type such as text or image. As we know, this message is getting delivered from one user who is the sender to the another who is the receiver. So we need to add the same message inside the chat collection of the user who is receiver in our case. Therefore, inside the receiver users document, create or update the chat collection and create the document with the current user's ID and add the message inside message collection. Now inside the send text method, clear the text controller. Next, unfocus the focus scope. And also if the text controller is empty, we will unfocus the focus scope here as well. So with this, if we send the message from our app, you can see our message has been saved inside the message collection with the receiver's ID in the current users collection, and the same message is also saved inside the message collection with the current user ID in the receiver users chat. Now let's add the send images functionality also. Therefore, inside chat text field widget on this camera icon button, call this send image method. Next, create this method send image. Inside this method, pick the image using media service class. Next, assign the picked image to this file object. And if the file is not null, we will call the add image message method of the Firebase Firestore service class. Pass the receiver ID and the image file inside. Now go to the Firebase Firestore service class and create this method add image message, which takes the receiver ID and the file. Upload the image using upload image method of Firebase storage service class. Next, create the message object and finally call the add message to chat method with receiver ID and the message object. Now after the hot restart, click on this camera icon and select the image, and you can see inside Firestore database our image message is also saved. So with this, we have learned how to add the messages inside Firestore database for the chat application. In this video, we will implement the read operation to show the single users with their messages. You can see we have already created the UI in our previous videos. So let's get started with the functionality. First of all, we want to read the users by their ID. In our previous videos, we have created this get all users method to read all the users. But now we want to get the users by their ID. Therefore, inside this Firebase provider class, create this method get user by ID, which takes the user ID. This method will return the user model. Therefore, create this user object above. Next, using the Firestore instance, get the users collection and then get the document of that user ID which we are supplying. Now inside snapshot, add this property to true so that we can get the updated users if new user gets added or deleted. Now listen the user snapshot and convert this user data into user model object. Also assign this user model object to our user object. Add the notify listeners next, and lastly return this user object. Now we want to call this method in chat screen, but first we need to make few changes here. Go to the chat screen and replace this user property with user ID. Scroll down and replace this field with widget.userid inside chat messages as well as inside chat text field widget. Now go to the user item widget and inside this gesture detector, inside chat screen, replace this user argument with user ID. Now go back to the chat screen and inside this initState method, call the getUserById method and pass the user ID to it. Next, wrap this row widget with the consumer. Here, if this value.user is not equal to null, we will show this row widget, else we will show this empty sized box. Now replace this widget.userImage with value.userImage. Also replace the name and the online status. Now every time on clicking on any of the users here, we are getting that user by using his ID. Now we want to get the messages of this user on which we have clicked from the Firestore database. Therefore, go to the Firebase provider class and create this method getMessages, which will take the receiver ID. This method will return the list of messages. Therefore, create this message object above. Now using the Firestore instance, get the document of the logged in user by passing the current user ID. Next, get the chat collection and pass the receiver ID to get this document. Now get the message collection and to its snapshot add this include metadata changes property to true. Next, listen to the messages and then map these messages, where inside convert the document JSON data into message object. And lastly, convert these message objects into list and assign to the message object which we have created above. Now add the notify listener and finally return the message object here. Also set the order using send time field, where descending will be false so that we will get the messages in ascending order. Now go to the chat screen and call this getMessages method inside initState. Next, go to the chat messages widget and add the consumer first. Next, replace this messages.empty with the value.messages.isEmpty. Also replace it inside this item count and inside item builder. Replace the same inside message bubble widget. So now restart the app and send the messages, and you can see we are able to see the messages here. Now we have a small problem here that our messages are adding up from top to bottom. Therefore, after some messages, we need to scroll down to see the messages. So to fix this, go to inside Firebase provider class and create this scroll down method. Inside this method, use the add post frame callback method of widget binding, and next, if scroll controller has client such as list view builder, then jump to the maximum scroll extent. Now call this method inside getMessages method and also add this controller inside list view builder of chat messages widget. So now on sending the messages, you can see our messages are not hiding anymore and we can see our all messages. So with this, you have seen how to implement read operation for messages and for single users inside chat application. In this video, we will use the update operation to update the user data such as his online status and last active time when user opens or closes the app. Till now, we were showing the default online status and last active time. First of all, go to this Firebase Firestore service class, scroll down and create this static method update user data, which takes the data field of map type. Inside this, using the Firestore instance, get the users collection and get the current users document, and finally use the update method by passing the data object to update the user data. You can pass any field to update such as name, online status and last active date, etc. First, we want to update the last active date when users sign in our app. Therefore, go to this login widget and inside this sign in method, after using the sign in with email and password method, call the update user data method, where inside pass the current date as last active date. So with this, we will be able to see the updated last active date here, but we also want to update the last active date and online status when user reopens the app. To do this, go to this chat screen and extends this chat screen state class with widget binding observer class. Next, add the observer inside initState. Also remove the observer inside dispose method. Now with the help of did change app lifecycle state callback method, we will update the online status as well as the last active status. Because this callback method gives 4 states such as resumed, inactive, paused and detached, wherein resumed gets called when user opens the app. Inactive gets called when user app runs in the background and is not visible to the user, such as getting the call or the notification, etc. Paused gets called when the app is not running in the foreground, for example switching to the another app or returning to the home screen. And lastly, detached state gets called when user terminates the app. So let's use switch statement to handle all these 4 states. Call the update user data method when app state is resumed, where inside last active date will be the current date, and set the online status to true true because user opened the app, so need to show online status inside the app. Next, break the case, so further it will not execute the statements. Next, on inactive, paused and detached, we call the update user data once, wherein online status will be false because in all three cases user is offline. And with this, break this case again. So now let's restart the app. You can see I have logged in with two different users here, and see we are getting online status for both of them, and last active time 2 minutes ago because we have logged in 2 minutes back. Now let's close the one app temporarily and see the online green color changed to the gray, which is offline. Now let's open the app again from the background and see the status is again updated to online, which is green color. Now let's terminate the app completely and you can see the user is turned offline again. So with this, we have implemented the update operation inside our chat application and also learned how to use app state to switch the online and offline status. In this video, we will implement the search user functionality so that logged in user can search other users inside this chat application. So first of all, let's create the UI where we will show the searched users. Therefore, create this user search screen first, and inside this chat screen in our app bar, add the search icon and navigate to the user search screen. Next, click on the search icon to go to the user search screen. Next, inside user search screen in its build method, under the scaffold, create the app bar with user search text as title. Next, in its body property, create the column widget. Pass the custom text form field as first child. We have already created this custom text form field widget. Next, add the controller and the hint text property. Now let's add some padding to our column widget. In its second child, let's create the list view builder inside expanded widget. Now in its state, let's create some dummy data using user model class. Now inside the list view builder, let's add the item count and pass the user data length to it. Next, to the item builder, pass the user item widget which we have already created. Pass the user data to this user item widget. Now let's add some padding to it to look better. Now let's search the user from Firestore database. Therefore, go to this Firebase provider class, scroll down and create this search user method which takes the name. Inside this method, we will call the search user method of Firebase Firestore service which we will create inside this class. We will pass this name string here. Next, go to this Firebase Firestore service class and create the search user method which will return the list of users. Inside this method, first get the users collection. Next, use the where operation to match the name of the user from the complete list of users. To match the name partially, we will use is greater than or equal to property and we are passing the name here. Next, we will get all those users. Now assign the user snapshot to this snapshot object, and next return the list of users by converting the user snapshot data to user model object. Now inside Firebase provider, inside search user method, assign this list of users to this search object which we have created above, and lastly call the notify listener to update the data in the UI. Now go to the search screen and inside custom text form field to this onChanged property, call this search user method. Now add the consumer to this expanded widget. Also, if controller text is empty, we will show the search icon with search for user text, else we will show the list of searched users here. Therefore, replace this user data length with values search length. Next, replace the same inside user item widget. While searching, we will not show the already logged in user himself. Therefore, check if the UID of the searched user is not equal to the current user ID, then only we will show the user, else we will show the sized box. So with this, you can see we are able to search the user in our chat application. In this video, we will implement FCM push notification in our chat application so that user can get the notification when he receives the new message. To do this, we are using the cloud messaging API provided by the Firebase. So first, we need to enable this API. Go to the Firebase console and select your project. Next, click on this gear icon and select project settings. Click on this cloud messaging tab and go to this cloud messaging API. Click on these three dots. Now click on this option. Now inside the Google console, enable this cloud messaging API. After this, you can copy this server key and go to inside your code and create notification service class and paste this key inside. Next, create the instance of Flutter local notifications plugin which is coming from this package Flutter local notifications. Create this method init local notification. Inside this, initialize the Flutter local notification plugin. We need to pass the initialization setting first. Therefore, create the settings. Inside this setting, we need to define the settings for both Android and iOS. Therefore, create the settings for Android and then for iOS, where we are setting these permissions to true. Next, on did receive notification response, we will print the response payload. Now create the method show notification, which will take the message object. Inside this, we will call the show method of Flutter local notification plugin. You can see the show method takes the ID, title, body, notification details, and payload. Therefore, pass the ID as 0 and title and description coming from message object. For notification details, we need to create the details first. Inside this notification details, you can see we have details for Android, iOS, Mac, and Linux, but we want to create only for Android and iOS. Therefore, create the Android details first, which will take the channel ID, channel name, importance, style information, and priority. We are passing this channel ID here. Also, go to inside Android manifest.xml file, and inside this application tag, inside activity, add this metadata tag with this name and value. Next, inside this values folder, create string.xml file so that we can define channel ID here, which we are using inside our notification service class. Therefore, inside this resource tag, inside string, define the name of string and then pass the channel ID. Next, get back to the notification service class and create the style information for the style information property. Now create the iOS details and pass this property to true. Now pass these Android and iOS details to notification details, and finally use the notification details inside the show method, and also pass the payload coming from the message object. If you check the documentation of FCM push notifications, you can see permission must be requested from your users in order to display remote notifications from FCM. Therefore, inside notification service class, create this method request permission, get the Firebase messaging instance. Next, using this instance, we are calling the request permission method and passing the following properties here. Now, if the authorization status is authorized, user granted the permission. If it's provisional, user will get the provisional permissions. Otherwise, user declined the permissions. Now, to send the notification to the user, we need his device token so that we can send the notification in his device. Therefore, we need to create this method getToken. Inside this, we get the token using Firebase messaging instance. After getting the token, we save this token inside our user collection along with other user data. Therefore, create the save token method. Next, get the reference of users collection. Now, inside the current user document, set the token. Now we want to get and save this token while sign up. Therefore, go to inside sign up widget and create this instance of notification service class. Now go to inside sign up method, and after creating the user, request the permissions first as we mentioned earlier before getting the token, and lastly call the get token method of notifications. Now we need to understand that we also need to save the token again on login so that user can get the notification if sign out from one device and signs in another device. Therefore, go to this login widget and create the instance again and request the permission and get the token here as well inside this sign in method. But on login, we need to replace the existing token. Therefore, go back to the notification service class and set options merge to true so that we can replace the token each time on login. Now we have set the local notifications, also saved the token. So now create the send notification method, which takes the body and sender ID. Inside this, call the API using post method where we are passing the FCM endpoint. Now to its header, pass the application JSON as content type and the authorization key which we have saved above at the start of this video. Next, in its body, we need to encode the map into JSON, which will take the data such as user token, notification message, title, and other data, etc. Therefore, to send the notification, we need to get the user's token first of that user to which we want to send the notification. We have already saved the tokens of every signed in user in our users document. Therefore, create get receiver token method, which takes the receiver ID, get the reference of users collection inside, and get the receiver users document. From this document, we will get the token. Therefore, create this field receiver token and finally assign the token to this receiver token object. Now we will trigger this receiver token method from chat text field widget. Therefore, go to this widget and create the instance of notification service class. And next, inside init state, call the get receiver token and pass the receiver ID to it. Now get back to the notification service class and inside send notification method, inside this JSON encode, pass the receiver token to this key, set the priority to high. Next, set the notification where pass the body message and title as new message, and now create the data field where set the click action and status property, and also add the sender ID which is the current user's ID, and lastly wrap this with try and catch to catch the exceptions. Now go to this chat text field widget, scroll down, and inside this send text and send image method, call this send notification method. Now get back to the notification service class and create the Firebase notification method. Inside this, call the init local notification method first to initialize the local notification. Now to trigger the background notification, call the on message opened app method, which will listen for the messages in the background. And after getting the notification, we will navigate the user to the screen whose messages he has received. Therefore, pass the sender ID to the user ID inside. Now to trigger the foreground notification, call the on message method, which listen for the foreground messages. And inside, call the show local notification method, which we have created above. Now go to this chat screen and create the instance of notification service class, and then call this method Firebase notification. Now we want to show the notification on terminated state as well. Therefore, go to main.dart file and call this get initial message method first. Next, call the on background message method, which takes the background message handler. Therefore, create the background message handler, which initialize the Firebase app. Now let's run the application. Send the message to this user from another app. And you can see we have received the notification here. Now get back to the home page, send the message from another device again, and see we have received the notification in background as well, and it is navigating to the user screen whose message I have received, which is working correctly. So with this, we have implemented the FCM push notification in our chat application when user receives the message.